look, here's a question for you. What is your attitude and opinion when it comes to things that seem either highly unlikely or even impossible? Kind of what's your thoughts, what's your opinion, what's your attitude about that? I suppose really it's leading on to the real question I want to ask you, and that is, do you believe in miracles? I have a thought about that. Do you believe in miracles? Because I think in general terms, not absolutely of course, but in general terms, one of the things that people know about Jesus, if they know very little about the Bible and Christianity and even Jesus himself, often one of the few things people generally know about Jesus is that he did miracles. I mean, maybe I can test that here. I mean, can you just shout out a miracle that you know or you think Jesus did? I'm not going to correct you if you're wrong. I'm not going to correct you if it's not in the Bible, but just shout out to me your awareness of Jesus and a miracle.
There was a crazy sort of guy, but he had 7 demons, legion. They cast them out of him, and this guy was that strong. He broke chains around. They tried tying him up with chains and bind him, and he broke the chains. He was that strong.
Goodness me, very, very good. Jesus casting out demons. Got one there. Anything else?
Water into wine.
Water into wine. Oh, someone had to get that one in. Isn't that a miracle we wish we could do today? Wait. Anything else?
Feeding of the 5,000?
Feeding of the 5,000. People are aware generally of that miracle, perhaps.
Healing the blind.
Healing the blind.
Lazarus.
Raising Lazarus. Lazarus is a bloke. Raising Lazarus from the dead. He's done a few, hasn't he? Goodness me. I actually want us to explore this a bit together. I mean, I suppose for this reason alone, Jesus did miracles. So the Bible says, so Christians believe. That alone can be a reason why people actually might dismiss the Bible altogether, ignore Jesus, and maybe reject the Christian faith. Why? Because when we're spouting on about a Jesus who did miracles and people are saying miracles don't happen, they might just dismiss it altogether. The trouble is, there isn't a Jesus without miracles. There just isn't a Jesus without miracles. But think a little more about miracles in general, the whole concept of the impossible happening, a miracle taking place. I mean, what is the issue about miracles anyway? This first slide, if you're able to see it, honestly, it seems to me, if you walk through Boots or Superdrug or some pharmacist, you literally are surrounded by miracles. You really are. Honestly, miracle beard and hair growth. Would anyone appreciate that here in this room? Not looking at anyone specifically. We've got a miracle cream. We've got a perfume just called Miracle. And miracle. These are just a few I found. You're surrounded by miracles, and all I've done is gone shopping. Now, in a few moments, where we are conveniently sat in little, what are they, pods? Groups? I'm going to give you a few moments to share with others if you want. If you don't want to, you don't have to. But to share with others in your little group, or just with the person next to you, a miracle that you have witnessed, or that you have heard about. Not necessarily a Jesus miracle from historically long ago and the Bible, but generally, have you ever seen a miracle yourself? Have you ever heard of a miracle? We're going to have an opportunity to share a little bit about our experiences on that one. I just want to say this is a really safe place for honesty and openness. If you're going to say in your group, and you are completely at liberty to say this, I haven't witnessed any miracles because they don't happen, then we're okay with that. Just be honest. That's fine. But as you think now, can I share with you a personal miracle? So I'm going to kick this one off publicly in front of you all, and it needs the next picture, because this is part of, it's not just my story, it's my wife Angela's story as well. Interesting that Chris mentioned being here at Ebenezer Church since 1986. Mm-hmm. Interesting, because that was the year Angela and I married. That means next year we have our 40th wedding anniversary. I know what you're thinking. We're looking way too young for that to be even possible. But having got married, we knew that we'd give ourselves a couple of years before we tried for a family. We wanted children, but hey, we wanted to enjoy just married life for a while, and then trying for a family and experiencing nothing happening. A few years more, still nothing happening. Something within us wanting to be parents, genuinely. And so we went to the doctor, we sought medical advice, only to find out, or to be told by the doctor, you won't have children of your own. So we chose the adoption route. We went through the whole process and adopted our eldest son, Matt. We had him when he was just 6 months old. We were very fortunate. He's the lad that I'm holding, or the very young me is holding. He's 30 now himself. We started the process to adopt again a second child. And as we did so, our miracle happened, because Angela fell pregnant. And she gave birth to a little boy, Tom, this is in his first week of life. And our Tom was born to us. And having 2 sons, we felt our family was complete. But this was our miracle. And I know people might say, come on, it wasn't a miracle, it was a chance thing that could happen anyway, notwithstanding what the medical experts say. I know that, people may say that, but for us, it genuinely was our miracle. You've just got a few moments, just with the person next to you or your little groups here, just have a little chat about a miracle that you've experienced or you've heard about. It might not be in your life, it might be in someone else's life, but just have a little chat amongst yourselves, and we'll see if we've got any good ones we might be able to share. Just got a few moments, so we've got to crack on, haven't we? Well, look, sorry to interrupt the flow. Interesting, the flow of conversation might indicate we have had some miracles. Are there one or two that someone is happy to share with the whole room? Don't have to, but was there a good one? Let's have a good one. They were all good! Oh, even better!
I think we've heard enough of my voice.
Any?
Yeah, no, no, you don't know me, so.
Go on.
Hello, my name is Graham. I worked with a guy at one time, he was between the age 55, 60 years old. And By this stage, I know, I go to church, yes, but I read the Bible, and again I read, a lot of people tell me it's metaphorical. I read it as it is, take it as it is, and I've been practicing it, and it's real. So one day, he'd always a sore shoulder, he'd get operated on all the time, and he couldn't lift anything up high above his head, and there's hundreds of weeks after the year. So I says to him one day, do you believe God could heal your shoulder? And he sort of just put it off, ignored me, and he was footing something else, and I just went on ahead, put my hands on his shoulder, and I said like a funny prayer, I said, Heavenly Father, I said, it's in your will, could you please sort out this man's shoulder and heal it? Put your power and now whatever, it says, and help this man and heal his shoulder. Cut long story short, I never looked back, his shoulder's been great. But again, I keep asking him, are you reading your Bibles? No, he hasn't. And I says, well, just let you know, that was about 3 years ago. I was just prepared if the pain comes back. No, that's on you for not seeking. But at that moment, he's still doing good.
Thank you so much for having some courage and sharing that with us as well. Yeah, absolutely. Look, if you've been here before, not all of us have been on a Thursday evening, we've been working our way through one of the books in the Bible. It's an eyewitness account of the life of Jesus by Mark. So on your tables you've got little Mark's Gospels. This is part of the Bible. It's just one of the many books that are within the Bible as a whole. And I'm going to read one of the miracle stories. In fact, the next picture will actually give it away if you've got any knowledge of this one at all. I'm going to read, now this is on page 15, so this is Mark chapter 6. And I'm reading from verse number 30, so right at the top of page 15 in this gospel. Otherwise, just listen as I read. The apostles, now that's just another name for Jesus' disciples, his followers. The apostles gathered round Jesus and reported to him all that they had done and taught. Then, because so many people were coming and going that they did not even have a chance to eat, he said to them, "Come with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest." So they went away by themselves in a boat to a solitary place. But many who saw them leaving recognized them and ran on foot from all the towns and got there ahead of them. When Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, he had compassion on them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. So he began teaching them many things. By this time it was late in the day, so his disciples came to him. "This is a remote place," they said, "and it's already very late. Send the people away so that they can go to the surrounding countryside and villages and buy themselves something to eat." But he answered, "You give them something to eat." They said to him, "That would take more than half a year's wages. Are we to go and spend that much on bread and give it to them to eat?" "How many loaves do you have?" he asked. "Go and see." When they found out, they said, 5 and 2 fish. Then Jesus told them to make all the people sit down in groups on the green grass. So they sat down in groups of hundreds and 50s. Taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, and looking up to heaven, he gave thanks and broke the loaves. Then he gave them to his disciples to distribute to the people. He also divided the 2 fish among them all. They all ate. They all ate and were satisfied. And the disciples picked up 12 basketfuls of broken pieces of bread and fish. The number of the men who had eaten was 5,000. So, that's our story for tonight. And I may as well go directly to the elephant in the room, namely the miracle. Did Jesus really feed 5,000 people with 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish? And maybe you've heard of this Bible story, Jesus feeding the 5,000. But actually, we can make it a little harder on ourselves in terms of accepting this story, actually. First of all, there would actually have been a much larger number of people than the 5,000 mentioned, because we're explicitly told there were 5,000 men. So, add in the women who would have been there, the children who would have been there, and probably it was more like 15 to 20,000, not 5,000. So, we've just upped the ante. Thought it was difficult enough with 5. Another of the gospel writers, because we've just read Mark's account, but another of the gospel writers, John by name, he makes a further observation. He says they were small loaves of bread and they were small fish. And I'm thinking, well, thank you, John. You at least could have helped by suggesting the loaves were enormous and the fish were huge. But no, apparently they were small. So this miracle seems rather extreme. And we're not really left with natural, normal, or reasonable explanations for this occasion. So we're going to have another opportunity just to chat in our little groups. You're doing really well on that, I've got to say. Let's have this slide. I've just put a few questions on this slide for us now to think about this miracle that Jesus did, feeding the 5,000. And I'm just suggesting some questions. You'll have other questions. Ask them. You'll have other observations. Make them. But here's some helpful suggestions for some questions, such as, is your reaction to this story one of disbelief? And like I said, it's okay to be honest here. No one's going to jump at you or jump down your throat. Well, I'm saying that, I'm also telling you that. Don't jump down someone's throat. If they say, I just can't believe this, then, hey, we're being honest. Let's keep this a good and safe place. So, is your reaction just one of disbelief? Let's be honest, if that's how we feel. And what are the barriers to our acceptance that this actually happened? What prevents us from believing it if we really can't believe it? And if it's not a miracle, then what did happen? Have you got any ideas? On what basis might we believe that this happened? And then an interesting question. Put yourselves in the shoes of those disciples when Jesus said to them, you feed this crowd of people. How would you feel when you're faced with 15 to 20,000 people and Jesus says, you feed them? So there's a few questions. Just in your groups, a few more moments. Have a little chat around those other questions you have. Please feel free to ask. But just a few moments in our groups. Go on, go for it. Okay, folks. Look, I'm not actually asking you to necessarily declare in front of everyone whether or not you believe this happened, but generally, any thoughts or observations? What's striking you from this story? What's making you think? What's making you wonder? Just shout out. Any comments? Any observations?
I've never doubted it.
You've never doubted it?
Not that. If it was in, we said if it's in today's way, I wouldn't believe it if someone said that happened now. But I think the message from it is if we all give a little, it can go a long way. It can feed those however many people. But back then, no, we were saying big things had to happen at the beginning of the journey. But no, there's been no doubt about it, it's just what happened.
Actually, you said something there very significant, I think, that actually from a little, a lot can be achieved. That actually Jesus was only presented with 5 small loaves, 2 small fish, and he accomplished something amazing. So there's something in that, isn't there? So thanks for mentioning that. Any other observations?
There's a context though, which sort of, this is the disciples are coming back from being sent out, and they'd started to see miracles. So I just believe that Jesus is asking them to feed them, because he wants to sort of draw on the experience that they've got and to encourage them further in their faith. And that's why he's asking them to sort of feed them.
Yeah, you're quite right. There is that context, and you can read about that elsewhere in the other Gospels. How Jesus sent his disciples out, even in pairs, and actually they were doing miracles, not in their own strength. It wasn't their own power. This was from God, and Jesus was enabling this to happen. And goodness, I wonder if that was a stretch for them. You know, I don't know. Did one of them think, well, I've just healed someone, but could I feed 20,000? That's stretching it a bit. Makes you think, doesn't it? Anything else? Any other thoughts?
We were reading at work about how Moses, the people were complaining about only having manna, miraculously having manna for so long, and they wanted meat. And then God said to Moses, give them meat. And Moses said, how am I going to give them meat? You know, there's not enough, whatever. And it's just an encouragement that for even us, like God asks us to do something, and we go, I can't do that, I'm not big enough, good enough, strong enough, whatever.
Yeah.
And yet God will use our bread, loaves or whatever, you know, whatever we've got.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And there is reference there to a story way back, hundreds and hundreds of years before, with Moses. God's people, the Israelites, were kind of wandering around in a desert and getting pretty hungry, and God provided them quite miraculously with a substance which was like bread, and they called it manna. But yeah, they even then were moaning about it. What, it's like more substantial, I want meat. And but yeah, thank you for sharing that. I love that. It's interesting what we think about, what we observe. One more observation. One more thought.
It to communion.
Oh,
Break the bread in communion.
Very
Something like
good.
that. The size of the bread we get might be the size that each of 5,000 would get.
Yeah, very good. So Jess is just seeing a link there, you know, that in communion. Now, Stuart did mention and has invited us all to come along next Thursday. Our reflective Easter service will include sharing communion together. If you've never experienced communion, come along. It'll be fascinating at least, but we'll be doing that. Thank you, Jess, for sharing that with us at all. So we've got some thoughts, we've got some observations around this occasion of Jesus feeding. I know we call it Jesus feeding the 5,000, but there were more. In many ways, I kind of think, you know, for the church today and for us as Christians, do you know, it's a lot easier to present Jesus as a great teacher. Now that's a lot easier. Yeah, we can say he preached about love and forgiveness, welcoming people and accepting people. We can say his teachings were good. They were moralistic. We can say his words brought comfort and peace and hope. We can say that Jesus was concerned because of what he said about injustice and inequality and fairness. He was a good teacher. He was a good preacher. He had good things to say. And it's a lot easier just to talk about a Jesus like that, because people might, would they? People may well be attracted to this palatable Jesus, this kind person, generous, this sanitized Jesus, if you like. As long as we leave out the weird stuff, as long as we put the miracles aside, wouldn't it be easier just to proclaim a Jesus who was a great teacher, a great preacher? This might be a more acceptable version of events. When Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, he had compassion on them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. Now that's fine. That's fine. Jesus is all about love and compassion. He sees this crowd of people and he's thinking, I care about them. They need loving. They need looking after, like a shepherd with the sheep. So that's fine. So he began teaching them many things. Well, that's okay. We've just said, haven't we, that he was a good teacher. He was a good preacher. By this time it was late in the day, so his disciples came to him. Look, it's a remote place, really late. Send these people to get themselves something to eat. And Jesus answered them, that's a great idea. Send the people off to get themselves something to eat. But that isn't what happened. That isn't what Jesus said. Why did Jesus have to complicate matters by saying, you give them something to eat? And in fact, we're given a huge issue by being presented really with a miracle-working Jesus. Some of these miracles have already been mentioned. He healed a man who had leprosy. He made a blind man see. He walked on water. He raised someone to life who had died. He calmed a storm. Let's have this next slide. Here we go, a quote from Mahatma Gandhi. Jesus, to me, is a great world teacher, among others. So, wouldn't this be an easier Jesus to handle, to talk about? Let's just consider him a great teacher. So, once again, just for a few moments in your groups, I'm going to ask you, let's have the next slide with a question this time. It's the same one. If we remove the miracles from the life of Jesus, what kind of Jesus are we left with? It's quite a challenging question, that, but just have a think and a little chat in your groups. Let's take Jesus, this great teacher, but let's take the miracles away. What kind of Jesus are we left with? Just a few moments. Have a chat about that. Okay. Thanks for having a conversation about that. Actually, there's quite a lot of questions, to be honest. I wanted to... But any thoughts, any observations? What kind of Jesus are we left with? Any thoughts?
Good teacher.
Is that all we're left with, a good teacher?
Got some interesting words.
Yeah.
He wasn't astonished anyone, the great miracles, they astonish people, the people that doesn't relate that. And then the word gets round.
Yes.
They get home at night, they're like, you should have seen what I saw tonight. Tell everybody. And word goes round then. That's why you got
even this story, there are 15 to 20,000 people. I mean, what's made them come out to listen to this? Just a good teacher?
The whole country would have knew that, in the 5,000, the guy would have gone round.
Wow.
The kings and the right.
Yeah. Any other thoughts?
I was thinking that if you call him a good teacher, you have to listen to what he's teaching you. You can't call someone a good teacher and then ignore what they've told you.
I'm just so sure. See if you're just a good teacher, but he'd come into a lot of new things.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff, and that's just happening now, as he says this. So imagine you, Son of God, you know knowledge of everything, and you're coming with this new teaching.
Yes.
They would stone him to death.
Yeah.
They had to know, they would have probably had to do that, or they killed him.
They actually tried to.
Oh, a few times.
Didn't they?
Yeah, they did.
They
Run,
didn't.
and they flee.
They didn't succeed. Look, this next slide, I'm just using this to suggest that maybe we are led here in this thinking, this conversation about this miracle at a fork in the road where we've got two possible ways to go. And I wonder which route we're going to choose to go down. So route one is this one. A Jesus without the signs and the wonders and the miracles. A Jesus who nevertheless was a good teacher, a great person you might say, an amazing teacher perhaps. But let's leave him with the words he spoke and let's remove the deeds which he did. And kind of that was the point of the question. What does that really leave us with? I suppose if Jesus did no miracles, we can reasonably conclude that he wasn't really the Son of God, the promised one, the Holy One from God. Because actually, if God is going to send one person into the world to be the saviour of the world, don't you think God would empower, and this person would be empowered to do miracles? I'm kind of thinking, this is just my thought. If I see a Jesus and I rip out all the wonders, the signs and the miracles, I'm kind of left with someone who didn't really come from God, who wasn't the Holy One of God. Because I'm thinking God would send someone who was going to do some amazing things. And actually, taking this route, it's a route that denies Jesus of miracles. I think it leads to a conclusion, kind of, well, there isn't a God, really. That's where it takes me ultimately. You work that out for yourself as to whether that's where it takes you. That he wasn't really God, he wasn't really the Son of God. In fact, there probably isn't a God, and it takes me down that route. I mean, if we were to extract all the miracles from the Bible, all the wonders and the signs, the Bible would be quite short. It really would be. In fact, it would just be a human story. That's all it would be. But we're not given that option, to be honest, of believing Jesus was just a good man, a great teacher. You could actually argue that we're not given that option because in many ways Jesus would be a liar, a deceiver for some of the things he said if he couldn't do miracles. Have a think about that. Route 2, well, that takes us down a Bible route, the Bible Jesus, the Jesus who is intact, words and miracles together, words that are validated by the things that Jesus did, deeds that were miraculous, one who really was the Son of God, the Holy One from God, one who shows us the reality of God, one who can bring us back to God. And I'm thinking that's route 2. That's the second choice I've got here. And if you look at today's Bible reading, the feeding of the 5,000, in the light that this is true, this is the real Jesus, well, we have an amazing Jesus. You know, if we accept a miracle-working Jesus, then I think this story reveals a load of things. Jesus was already attracting thousands of people to come and hear what he had to say, as was said here, and to see what he did. And on this occasion, 15 to 20,000 people. Today, Jesus has millions of followers. He looked upon others with compassion and love. On this occasion, he saw this crowd. They were like sheep without a shepherd. He had a shepherd heart to love these people. He wanted to teach us the truth and those things that are good and right. And on this occasion, he taught them a load of things. He cares about our ordinary needs. I wonder if we picked that up at all. You know, he cared that these people were hungry, so he fed them. He cares about those ordinary needs we have in life. He can take the little that we have and do amazing things, as was said here earlier. I love that. To me, Jesus is in the business of multiplication and addition. he multiplied 5 loaves and 2 fish and fed nearly 20,000 people. That's some multiplication. And then afterwards, when they added up what they had left, they counted 12 baskets of food. I really like this Jesus. I think the Jesus without the miracles isn't really a Jesus at all. Just a man. You might say irrelevant, really. But the Jesus that Mark presents us with, a miracle-working Jesus, I like this Jesus. I want to follow this Jesus. I want to hear what he's got to say. And I might even want to have a go at doing some of the things he did. But don't give me a crowd of 20,000 people and say to me, you feed them, because that might stretch my own faith. I don't know.